Fresh from the showroom here at SwissWatchExpo, we're talking about the GMT Master watches this morning that are the Pepsi Bezel. Of course, Rolex never calls them Pepsi. These nicknames are from the fan base. The blue and red is called Pepsi, red and black is called Coke. The kind of creamy and brown is root beer. And it's interesting that this name is so universally applied to this watch. Everyone calls this watch a Pepsi GMT, even if it's from Timex.
Yeah, that's true, or Seiko, which is really popular among all the what I call the watch light collectors.
Right.
Folks that really enjoy the least expensive ones and like to modify them heavily, and it's a really kind of a neat thing. Being in the watch world is kind of amazing all by itself. It's sort of like being in the collector car world.
Right.
One of the things that's really cool about this that I always think that people should do is refer to this as the Pan Am Rolex, because if it hadn't been for Pan Am, this watch may not exist. And what I mean is the pilots originally had a need because they were flying all over the world. The international pilots were flying all over the world. The original Thunderbird, which we know as the Turnograph watch, was developed by Rolex as a response to the Thunderbird's flying team, jet team, the demonstration team in the 1950s. And as everybody should know, but may not know, is Pan Am pilots were Air Force pilots. There were some Navy pilots in there as well, but the majority of them were Air Force pilots. And when they started flying internationally, they thought that it would be great to be able to have a movable bezel, not wholly unlike that Navitimer from Breitling. And yet they wanted to be able to keep track of several different time zones at once. And they also wanted to be able to use military time to quickly identify it.
And yeah, the story that I've heard is that Pan Am was in on it and commissioned the watches because they needed a consistency across the board. So for example, something happens, we have to file an incident report, we say it happened at 2 a.m. Well, 2 a.m. where? And so they wanted everything synced to the Greenwich Mean Time. That's where we get the GMT initials from. That's the time zone that runs through London.
Right.
And that way everything would be synced to London time as far as their official time for the company. But then you could set the main clock time to wherever you physically are. So you've always got one hand pointing to GMT and one hand pointing to wherever you are. And
if you needed to quickly check a third time zone, you could actually ratchet the bezel. And based on your hour hand, you would know how many, plus or minus how many hours you needed to check. You would be able to quickly pick up what the third time zone was, which is very interesting.
And what a lot of people now might not realize is that Pan Am at the time was completely unlike anything else there is in the world now. They were essentially the flag official airline for the United States at the time. They were the nicest, most luxurious airline in the world. They were the ones that you had to dress up to fly on the flights. The Beatles flew Pan Am when they came to JFK the first time.
Right.
All the celebrities, the presidents, even before there was an Air Force One, they flew Pan Am.
Right.
So it was a different kind of carrier than exists in the world now.
And they also had exclusive rights to enter foreign airspace. Soviet bloc Russia at the time, the Pan Am was the only airline allowed into Russia to be able to land. Which brings us to another point, which is kind of a fun point. It's not verified, quote unquote, but a lot of the Pan Am pilots were CIA agents. And they would fly in, do their business, and then leave quickly. And one of the things that was great about Rolex at the time was Rolex was pushing the idea that if you had a Rolex, it was worth money. And no matter where you were in the world. And of course these watches were highly coveted, and since Pan Am pilots were the only ones that actually had a watch from Rolex with the GMT bezel, no one else in the world had it. It had just come out. They could sell these watches for a whole lot of money if they got themselves into trouble. They could trade it to get out of sticky situations all over the world. So it was more than just a little bit. And by the way, the Submariner became the same way later on. They were standard issue to our Ranger battalions, our special operations forces, and so on, especially in Vietnam. They were always known as a get out of jail free card, if it were, in loose terms.
So what's the closest here to the original design?
So in all sincerity, this one is the one that I picked because it has the faded bezel, and the age of the watch is shown based on the patina of the dial and that sort of thing. And here I'll let you kind of hold that and inspect it, because I'm going to pick up another one, which is a little bit later generation. It's from the 80s, and this watch has a more clean, crisp bezel on it. It's got a little bit more clean, crisp dial. It appears that this watch was very well taken care of. However, it could have been serviced in its life. And this is one of the things I think we run into all the time with our customers. They always ask, do you know if the dial is original? Do you know if the bezels are original? What about the insert? Why is this one so clean versus the other?
Yeah, they want to know whether this bezel insert originally left the factory in this watch. And the fact is, there's no way to tell. It's not like cars where every single thing on the car is stamped with the VIN number of the car. Rolex doesn't number these dials. They don't number the crystals. They don't number the bezel inserts.
Right.
There's no way of knowing 100% for sure. What we can say is that the age of the dial is consistent with the age of the watch, or the bezel insert appears to be consistent in the age of it based on how much the patina is. We can also tell in a lot of the instances which color bezel insert came on the watch originally, but we can't say that this one came on this watch.
Right, and the fact of the matter is that back before Rolex sort of centralized and in-housed everything with their watchmakers, they actually had these bezels at any authorized dealer. You could buy a GMT with a black insert and change it to the Coke bezel or the Pepsi bezel. Probably not as much on the root beer bezel, because if you remember, the root beer dial looks physically different, so it probably wouldn't have been done that way. If you did, you're probably just colorblind like me.
Yeah, when I worked for an authorized dealer, we had stacks of these bezel inserts. Who knew that years later they would be worth as much as they are? In fact, the faded ones, we used to throw them away because the people wanted a fresh one every time the watch was serviced. And who knows how many thousands of dollars of bezel inserts I've thrown away in my lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the Coca-Cola bezels, the red and black, you could literally have a collection, and you could switch them out at will.
And some of our watches do come with all three bezel inserts, the black, the Coke, and the Pepsi as part of the package.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now they're doing, this is our white gold piece. It's the new ceramic bezel, the blue and red. This was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rolex patented this because the process to be able to get that red and blue just so was extraordinarily hard, and they worked on it for years to get that division like that. They're one of the only companies that can actually do it effectively, if not the only company, because I'm not sure if I know anybody else that does it in the ceramic on the red and blue like that. Let's move on for just a second to the Tudor, because this is, obviously, I'm a huge Tudor fan. This watch was a specifically interesting watch, as the original Pepsis were, because this one has a little bit of a strange history. When it very first came out, first of all, it has a little bit darker navy blue up top, and the red is a little bit more crisp red. It's like a candy apple red, which is really cool. It's obviously a painted bezel. And this is a GMT as well. It uses the Tudor in-house movement, the MT56XX, insert a number, I think is, 5612, 50, yeah, go ahead.
And it's the same case as the Heritage Black Bay, right?
It is, but it is just a smidge thicker on the back. There again, it's so imperceptible that it doesn't make much sense to even worry about the thickness of the case. We get that question quite a bit, but unless you have them side by side, you're not going to notice the difference. It doesn't wear any different on your wrist. As a matter of fact, some people actually prefer this one because the case back is a little bit more flat and it's a little bit wider, because when they went deeper, they were able to expand the case back. It's a little bit, yeah. So one of the things that was happening, this watch actually has a date function. And one of the things that was happening when this watch very first came out was as the 24-hour hand was moving around the dial, the date would flip and it would advance 2 or 3 days, or even 5 days. There was
time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. So people immediately, it was sort of, I wouldn't say recalled per se.
Okay.
If folks had a problem, they would send it back. Well, that was pretty much the majority of every owner, right?
Right.
So everybody sent their watches off. Tudor fixed them for free. It took a while for them to go through all the different pieces because they were such a huge popular item. Once they come back, they're 100% fixed and they're fine. They're now extraordinarily hard to find. You can't find them new. They're just like a lot of the Rolexes. They're extraordinarily hard to find at the authorized dealers. You can get this watch as we have this one here with the leather strap. You can get it in the fabric strap. You can also get it with the capped metal bracelet on it as well. So there's several different options, and just because you buy one doesn't mean you can't buy the others as accessories. You go directly to Tudor and buy any of those straps or bracelets.
Cool. That's a great watch. I mean, well, what's not to love, right?
Right.
It's interesting that this does just say GMT. It doesn't say GMT Master or GMT Master 2 or anything like that. It's just GMT.
Right.
And then chronometer officially certified.
The other thing about this watch is how far the second hour hand extends out to the outside edge of the case to make it very clear what time it is.
It's all the way to the edge, really.
It is a turnable bezel as well.
Yep.
A lot of people always ask that. They say, well, is that bezel turnable? Does it work like the Rolex GMT? It absolutely does. It's got the snowflake hand for the hour and the second hour hand, which is interesting. By the way, the snowflake hand was designed by the U.S. Navy. This Black Bay there again, the original introduction year was 2012. This came out right around 2016.
All right. Great collection.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And remember, click on the little bell, subscribe to our notifications so that you'll know when Swiss Watch Expo releases new videos. Visit SwissWatchExpo.com. All of these watches are presently available on our website.